Okay.
Joel and Andre, the floor is yours for the
Okay.
first quarter financial update for the city of Worcester.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. I'll start it out just with the first couple slides, and then I'll turn it over to Andre. He'll go over all of the finances, and then I'll jump back in and go over some of the operations highlights for the year, a little bit of look ahead at 21. And I know several of our managers are here, so feel free, during this to ask questions of them, and they're the experts in each of their area. So I will start out by sharing my screen. Can everybody see that?
Oh, yes.
So this is
Yes.
our 2020 operations and our first quarter 2021 financial update. And it's sort of organized with these high level categories, which are sort of our organizational goals or areas of service. So you'll see public service, that'll have finance, HR, public safety, economic community development, public infrastructure, quality of life, where recreation would be, and then public participation. So that it generally organized under those categories. Those are also the same categories that you'll see on our website, where we have our performance indicators, where some of the things that are in their annual report, we track during the year, and we publish those so you can see how we're doing, and some additional things. So this is how we started 2020. We were pretty excited. This is a little screenshot from the video the chamber did, if you remember, back at the beginning of 2020. So there was actually a video, but we figured we wouldn't make you suffer through that. So we just took a screenshot of that. So we were pretty excited to start out the year, not really realizing how things would quickly change after that. So the rest of it sort of felt like this. With COVID, with quarantining, with all the various mandates, different things closed down. I'm sure some of you in business, supply chain issues, just for basic materials and things. So, a little scary, starting out the beginning of the year, first quarter or so, not really knowing how that was going to affect everything for the city, financially or operationally. But, as the year went on, I think we got used to some things, and got used to feeling like we were in the Brady Bunch intro about, 5 or 6 times a week, and being on Zoom. I will say, I think Zoom's a great tool, can be very helpful, can be very efficient, but if you do anything hundreds of times, it gets pretty old. So, I'll be ready for us to get back into in-person meetings and be able to interact, and look at each other, and hopefully we'll be able to do that here, not too much longer. And I think, we really have some good stuff to look forward to as a city. So with that, I'll turn it over for Andre so he can give you the good news.
Thank you, Joel. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So again, what that just showed, that we were looking at our first quarter financial information, and the first set of data I normally like to present what I call activity measures. And the top of the screen, you'll see our income tax receipts, which are our primary general fund source of revenue. Good news is if you compare first quarter 2021 to first quarter 2020, we're up 13.5% overall. If you look in the category called withholding, which is where we get most of our income tax receipts, we're up 2.4%. Dollar figure wise, that meant we were up in total $625,000 this quarter versus last year first quarter, and our withholding was up just under 100,000. I think we're at about 98,000 if you do the math. Now to add a little context as well, I also try to compare this to what I had budgeted for the year. And if I compare this to budget, at this time my budget would be about $5,010,000. That would be about a 5% change, or we're over budget by approximately 5%, or about $250,000. So real good news in that respect. And I would think that this would continue for the rest of the year. In other words, I don't, at this stage, I don't see any landmines there, but one never knows. There could be that fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth wave. Second piece of actually these other measures, the second part of that, our building permit valuations are up. We're at 14.2 million in valuations. First quarter of 2020, we're at about 48.8 million this quarter. Now, Tim can elaborate on this, but I think a big portion of that, I think, is the Lowry Center update. But again, this why that's important is because you see people continue to invest in our community. Another one that I'm really excited about. Now, keep in mind, this is only through February because March bed taxes weren't due to be postmarked until Thursday the 15th, and I had put this together prior to that. So if you compare January, February 2020, which is pre-COVID, to 2021, January, February, we are only, and I say only, down 10%, which I think is pretty amazing and outstanding. And in dollar figures, that's only about $3,200. So I'm very pleased with that. For whatever reason, we have actually billed, our customers have used about 3% less water for the first quarter than last year. And you'll see that in our, when we go to the the water section, you'll see that our actual charges for services are down by about that same amount. The other areas there are, you'll see our unemployment, we're doing better than the United States, both locally, Worcester, both Wayne County and our state of Ohio. So that's very exciting. And then I only had data through January for sales tax, but Wayne County sales tax, we're up again in, you've compared January to January 2020 versus 2021. Before we go to the general fund section, does anyone have any question regarding the activity measures page here? Perfect. I will move on. Okay, let's go to the general fund section now. General fund, again, some nice information here to present. First of all, under the first line item under revenues is taxes. That taxes also includes property taxes as well. So it's an income and property. And you'll see that for the first quarter, we are about 5% over budget, which of course makes sense because our income tax receipts themselves are 5% over budget. Intergovernmental, that would be what we receive basically from Columbus, where I equate that to a timing issue, about 2.5% under. Charges for services, 4.5% under. Anyway, overall, though, we are 4.1% over budget in revenues for the first quarter of 2021, which is, again, a good outcome for the first quarter of 2021. Now, and there's even more good news on the other side of the equation. So that's coming in. Now, going out, you'll see that the program safety services, you'll see that personnel is under budget by about 2%, and overall, our operating expenses for safety services down 3%. Moving on to leisure services, our personal services are down 4%, and a lot of that is, keep in mind, it's seasonality. You're going to hire more people in the summer months, but overall, they're down 9%, and we typically see that those higher numbers again here under leisure services, again because you're more of a summer-oriented programming. Environment and development, where personal services again brought down lower 2% than budget, and for overall down 7%. Transportation services, you're seeing that we're about 0.6% over in personal services. Keep in mind, this would include overtime for snow events, January, February, and if we had any in March, which I think we did. So again, that's almost basically right on budget. And then overall, we're 6% under budget for transportation services. And then finally, if you look at our admin services, same pretty much trend you'll see here as well. Personal services is about 2% under budget, and overall under budget 4%. That means that for our general fund, we were under budget about 3.5% for the year. So if you add the 3.5, 3.6 actually, so we're really, the delta change, the change is almost 8% to the good for the general fund for the first quarter, which actually means that we added about 1.3 million cash to the general fund for the first quarter. And that would, if we look at our cash standpoint, to look at our days in cash, our available cash, when you pull out the encumbrances, is just under 15 million. It's about 14.9 million. Where cost per day is about 69,300. That leaves us with about 215 days in cash, which is really solid. It's not too crazy high, but it's just solid. So I'm very satisfied with our first quarter general fund results. Any questions before I move to the street revenue funds? Okay, seeing none, I'll move to. So these are our three street revenue funds I just combined. And now one thing that to note that is, I guess, not unremarkable but slightly remarkable would be the intergovernmental section. Those are basically gas and license fees we get. I see it for the first quarter, they're down about 3.7%. That could be, and we'll know as we go on, attributed partially to the COVID, and that if people aren't driving as much, we're obviously not receiving as much in gas taxes. So that'll be to be determined as the year plays itself out, but that's part of that reason. I can't blame it on timing differences or anything. Otherwise, though, we're right on budget on the expense side. So again, we're pretty solid on our street revenue funds here, and we'll be spending all of this capital probably between now and the fall once construction season gets full swing. Any questions here? Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to capital projects. Capital projects, that's our uncapital projects fund. Because we have $2.5 million in grants that we haven't received, we do reimbursement. This is going to be under budget and for a while until probably, I don't know, maybe third or fourth quarter of the year once we get reimbursed on these grants, depending on when the projects are done and the grants are submitted. But so overall, it shows that we're at 8% under budget, which again is to be expected. And then we're under budget on the capital side because construction season we're bidding this stuff out and it's already starting right now. So this will again even itself out throughout the year. But so that's going according to plan as well. Any questions about that, the capital projects fund? Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our utilities. And the first one up is the water fund. And the first, I'll direct your attention to the second line down. Second line down is charges for services. And remember, we had billed 3% less. Well, you're seeing it just about that here. Our charges for services are 3.4% under budget, which makes perfect sense. Now, I would anticipate making this up probably during the summer months. The intergovernmental line right above that would be a grant. And again, that'll be a reimbursement grant. We won't receive that probably till third, fourth quarter of this year. So on all these utility sections, you'll see fines, license, permits. Those are basically penalties. And we put a moratorium on penalties during the COVID. So some of the utility funds will receive them, and they will receive them only because we have got them from penalties that were in arrears prior to the whole COVID thing. So the water fund obviously did not receive any, but anyway, so overall we're about 4.5% off on our revenue side for the first quarter. But if you look on the other side of the equation, you'll see that we are under budget for operations, 3.3%. I'm sorry. So again, that delta is only like 1%, then 1.2%. And again, same true with capital. You'll see this, we'll be spending this capital monies during the construction season. But all in all, it's pretty much as expected for the first quarter of the year. Again, like I said, boring is okay here. Any questions about our water fund? Okay, seeing that, I'll move on to our sanitary sewer. Now, sanitary sewer won't match one for one our water fund. We do bill because we bill for other things in our charges for services. You'll see we're only down 1.3%. From the residential side, we do bill based on usage on the sanitary side, but we bill for other activities here. We have people drop the sludge off, we treat that, and then there's some food stock fees. So that's why that doesn't equal that 3% under budget situation. And then we got a little bit of like I said, penalty from prior to the whole COVID thing here. But otherwise, we're almost right on. We're 0.9% under budget for the first quarter, again, which is just fine. On the operating expense side, you'll see we're just about 5% under budget. And again, same holds true for our capital outlay. You'll see that ramping up here, and it'll even out in the third, fourth quarter of the year. But pretty much you'll see we broke even from a cash checking standpoint. We spent 2.243 million. I'm sorry, brought in, and we spent 2.234 million. So that's $9,000. Any questions about our sanitary sewer fund and operations? Okay, seeing none. More boring stuff. Look at this. Our charges for services, right on for our sanitary sewer fund, which again makes sense. And then for whatever reason, we must have received something we must have certified something from the county and received about $3,000 in past penalties. I'm not sure what the $7,500 was for the miscellaneous in that, but we ended up being about 1% over for our revenues for the quarter. And you'll see our operating expenditures are down 4%. So again, that's a plus 5% total. And same old is true for the capital here. You're going to see that leveling out come third quarter, probably third or fourth quarter, definitely. So that's what we have for our storm fund. Again, good news and relatively boring, but we like that. Finally, if there's no questions, I'll move on to the final, which is our refuse or trash fund. And this, surprisingly, what should be is right out on where it should, because it shouldn't fluctuate too much. So we're 0.1% over on our revenue side and 0.6 basically under on the expense side. So again, all in all, a very mostly boring report, but very happy to see the vitality of our local economy. Not only our income tax receipts, but again, with our lodging taxes or bed taxes, I'm really happy to see how well they're doing, because that's twofold. Number one, you have business travelers coming to our community, and secondly, we have tourists coming to our community. So again, that's another positive. And that's the end of my report, unless I can answer any questions. Joel, I'll turn it over to you. Oh, I'm sorry, there's our portfolio review. The only thing that's really changed is that you'll see our weighted average yield is probably about half of what it was last year at this time. That's purely because of the interest rate environment, which is ticking up a little bit, as you may or may not see there. Thank you, Joel. Turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you, Andre.
Thank you. Love myself.
And like I said, I don't think we'll take up all the time, so we should have time at the end if anybody wants to circle back and ask any questions. So we'll start out with our police. And you can see there the top 5 service calls, the types we get. They're, traffic, suspicious activity, 911, security checks, those kinds of things. A couple of things I like to highlight. If you can see here, calls for service, we're not down considerably. You can see they've been, right around that 22,000 for really the last 4 years. So, we didn't see a significant amount of change there. We did see some changes in calls for service, probably first quarter, first half or so. Again, I think because people were staying in, those kind of things, I guess. So one of the nice things is, and if you go to our performance indicators on our website, and I'll give you that website at the end here, we track every call for service by type. So you can see exactly how many of each type. And, I guess one of the good things that came out of COVID and people staying home is Part 1 offenses. Those are the serious ones. We're down about 12% from 2019. And stolen property was down 22% from 2019. So, and you can look at all those numbers by type. And traffic enforcement was down quite a bit as well, just because, again, not as many people out there. We did do, that was probably really the only operational change we made in police was, maybe not pulling over everybody quite as often, just to try to limit, at least in the first quarter, first half, to try to limit some of that direct contact and information. But for the most part, just a lot of people were staying home. And so we didn't see some of those things that you typically see. And you can see overall it was only down, a couple thousand maybe calls for service there. The other thing I just would highlight is just, the job and the way we operate in our police. We early on adopted the Ohio Collaborative, safe policing protocols. And I think that started back in 2016. We've continued to keep those up to date and get recertified. And you can see down here at the bottom, we listed some of our, some of the other police departments, in our area and their sizes, and then just looking at the different categories. And you can just see that, for Worcester, here down at the bottom, we're certified in all of them and we're recertified. So, that's something we think is important. It's the latest policies, in policing. And so we felt that was important to maintain that. And the other thing is training. Our police officers engage in about 3,500 to 4,000 training hours per year, which is quite a bit. We think that's important. And that's something you can also look up on our performance dashboard and track that year by year, just to see that, yeah, we are keeping up with those things. So, our police department's been very progressive in a good way as far as seeking those certifications, making sure we have the latest training, tracking data. We track all kinds of data, even things we don't have to track. We share that information transparently with anybody that wants to know it, keep our policies up to date. Because, keeping our citizens safe and our police force safe is a priority for us. So that's something that we take very seriously. Looking a little more at our community relations, that was a bit of a challenge this last year, obviously, as a lot of outreach efforts and things were canceled. We did do some things virtually, but that was to keep the police officers and our public safe. But what I can say is our community relations division, our patrol division, our command staff, they all worked, very hard with interested community organizations to promote peaceful events, to facilitate dialogue, and again, to share that information. So, you can attribute that, to our chief and our assistant chief, our captains, and all of the staff up there to be forward thinking, responsive, and being real sensible in how they police and how they adopt policies and those kind of things. So, it was a little bit of a challenge to recruit and to get people interested in policing overall. So one of the things they did early or started thinking about and then implemented in October was establishing a recruitment team that had officers, and they would go out to various, events. And one of the things that they were able to do, one of the first applications that we had after they started really marketing that, we had about 95 applications, which is, exponentially more than we typically have. So even, in the current culture, the current climate, we had more applicants than we'd had in many, many years, and ended up after testing having, about half of those that were eligible for employment. So, we've been able to steadily add a few. We're still probably about 5 officers down right now with retirements and everything. But, our recruitment and our hiring process is very, very, I won't say complex, but very thorough, we just want to make sure we got the right people, representing us in our police force. So there may be people that we pass on that don't make it through, that may be perfectly fine, and others may hire them. But for us, our standard, our bar is really high, and that's something that we feel is important. Here's just a few more statistics on the fire side of things. And you can see the graph here of the calls for service by type, as far as fire, EMS, and total over the years, really from 1975. So this one goes back quite a ways, up to 2020. So you can see how those things have increased over the years. And I would say, Barry was telling me that, Chief Saley was telling me that we saw about a 15% reduction in the first part of last year, in first part of 2020, mostly due to, again, people staying at home, people not going out and participating in things. And there were a lot of people just not even going to the hospital. So that, that was a significant impact. As far as, our officers themselves, we didn't, really the only thing that changed for us is some safety protocols that they implemented for our fire officers and for the people they would pick up, when they would do transports, basically just assuming everybody had COVID. So they would be in full gear, full safety precautions. And I'm pretty sure, and Barry can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last I checked, we did not have one case of COVID that was in the fire department that was due to, patient or client transfer. And I think that's due to the job that our guys did, in implementing policies and keeping everyone safe. And similarly to the police, our fire department completes over 4,500 hours of training per year. We consider that very, very significant, very important for us. One little point of information that's not so good. When the first round of stimulus money came out to individuals, last year, we did see an uptick in drug and alcohol related calls after that money was distributed. So there did seem to be a correspondence between those two things, unfortunately, for us. Just a few more statistics from our fire division. You can see mutual aid, with some of our surrounding fire departments. You can see the top 5 types of calls where we come from, mostly home. When our EMS goes is to people's home to then transport them to the hospital. So that's the majority by far of the type of calls we do. You can see here on our fire inspections and community risk reduction, a little bit of a drop off in 20 there again, due to some of the COVID restrictions that we had. And there were, several businesses that closed down for periods of time. So we couldn't get into those facilities. So that's why you see a drop off there, but that is a big priority that you'll probably see an uptick in for next year. But that doesn't mean the guys weren't busy when they weren't going on calls, because they turned right around and put more resources into COVID education and community risk reduction, and helping out our health department do clinics for both testing and for vaccinations. We've probably had at least 7 to 8 staff dedicated to helping the county health department run those different events. So they just sort of shifted gears a little bit as far as that goes. And just a few more statistics there, just on the other types of activities that are fire prevention, public education. You can see how it's pretty evenly distributed there, what our guys do. So we'll move along to development department, Jonathan Millay, and our development coordinator. So just a couple of highlights on some things that have happened sort of recently. The Menards and the Myers isn't new. If you remember, I think this annexation happened back in 08 or 09 with the intent of, a couple of big box extending our retail area up there. It's about 53 acres. This is about 400,000 square foot of new retail space, probably between full-time and part-time, probably 300 to 600 jobs there. And according to Jonathan, looking at some statistics of surrounding areas, we're a little undersupplied when it comes to retail. It may not seem like that, but what that means is we have, fewer retail opportunities per our population than a lot of other areas around us, which means there's probably, a decent amount of spending and taxes that goes elsewhere because you drive somewhere else to get those other options. So, and I think Jonathan estimated around $500,000 in taxes, sales tax, going to other counties because we were a little undersupplied in that area. So this is really the culmination of what was intended back in 2009, and it was even zoned back then. We sort of put it into ag for a holding pattern, and the hope was that eventually it would come back. It just took probably a little longer than we thought, after the Great Recession happened there back in 2009, 2010. So they're moving forward. Menards first, and then Myers will come a little bit later. There will be another small little roundabout as the entrance just north of our current one. So there won't be a light, won't stop anybody. There'll be a three-legged roundabout there. Also under the community and economic development is housing. Based on, some conversations we've had and developers we've been talking to, we're looking at the potential of about 600 new units over the next 5 years. That does include the apartments that just, are about finished out on 585, which have a fairly high percentage for low to moderate income as well as some market rate. This would include some, one of the developments that's on the agenda for council tonight, if that were to, to move forward. So at least probably 100 or more units that could potentially be done through 2021. And this is really, these follow the job growth. We have businesses starting to expand. We have a lot of competition and for talent right now. So we know workforce is a bit of a challenge. So trying to be a little strategic about how we plan and try to encourage some housing of all types, all the way from apartments to single family, to help meet that housing demand and support our local businesses. Speaking of businesses, obviously you're all aware of our Worcester Innovation Site, the industrial park there, about 136 acres. Been a lot of activity there. Very popular site. It's our only greater than 30 acre site in the city, shovel ready. One of the few really in Northeast Ohio, according to Jobs Ohio. And we're really seeing the fruits of our forward thinking, putting some capital investment up there as far as water, sewer, roadway, and seeing that, bring, potentially some new business and expansions for some of our current businesses here. So that's all good news. Some statistics here from Jonathan regarding our, some of our tax incentives. I think as far as I know, we're the second or third most active, when it comes to tax incentives, CRAs in the state right now, and especially pound for pound for our size, we're probably one of the top performing cities as far as that goes. But this just shows you the amount of jobs overall, the amount of payroll, the amount of investment that's being supported by these types of things. So, we're bringing and we're retaining a lot of jobs, over 2,400 jobs, 142 million in payroll through the EZ, almost 240 jobs, and over 8 million in payroll from the CRA. And you can see here, we've had 5 that are fairly new, Certified Angus Beef, Ray and Associates, Crop Investments up off 585 there, Baker Properties, and MMR. So we've had over 10 million invested, 54 jobs retained, and 10 new ones just through the CRA program. And if you look at both of them together, you can see here, a little return on investment, in doing these and making these incentives available. If you add all those numbers together, it's, almost 2,900 jobs that we're retaining here. And in real estate taxes, almost $1 million. So, it's been a really good program. It's really helped out. Everyone benefits from that. The schools, the city, the county, and in our businesses as well. Moving on to planning and zoning, Andrew Dutton, our manager there. A couple of things we did this year, you see listed, this residential development guide. This follows along with what we were talking in regards to housing. We did, and you can find this online as well. It's sort of a bit of a marketing brochure that shows all of the, the parcels in town or close to town that could be developed for housing. And it shows, what are some of the limitations or restrictions to that? Is there water and sewer available? What it would cost to extend those types of things. So it's really helpful, give some of the trends that we're seeing. And we've been sharing that with our partners at WDC, the chamber, with realtors, developers, builders, just to try to facilitate, let people know what's out there and what's available. Again, that's just been a priority of our business community. We also did a bit of a little quick guide for new businesses at a request of some of the businesses that were coming into downtown early last year in Main Street. What does it take? What kind of permits do I need? Do I need a building permit? Do I need a zoning permit? What are the parking requirements? All of those things. So we did a little guide for new businesses and shared that with Main Street that then they give the new businesses when they're looking at coming to the city. You can see as far as applications, the total here, this top line up a little bit in 20, but fairly flat overall when you look back across the years, which I guess is pretty good considering, COVID in 2020. And then you can just see the different types of applications that we have or that we receive. Sorry, having some mouse trouble here. Zoom in on that just a little bit. So you can see the type of most zoning would be the biggest one that we have, the most number, and the number of fees again from our zoning. This is our enforcement. So you can see, property maintenance and zoning violations. You can see here just wanted to tell you the type of violations. You get a little idea of the different types. And then you can see there are RT inspections. That's where we focus some of our property maintenance back in 2014. See quite a bit of uptick here in the number of inspections we've done just in the last year, really focusing on that area. The other thing that we've done is Kevin Gibbons, our deputy law director, we've transitioned to doing prosecutions in-house. And we've seen a good bit, just that threat of prosecution, having somebody willing to do that has really, we've seen an uptick in compliance, by initiating that. So that's been good news. Here's some building standards. Tim Monet, our manager there. Andre touched a little bit on some of these numbers that we'll get into. We are down a little bit overall when you look at the number of permits issued from 19 to 20. And obviously all these things sort of follow along. If you have less building going on, you're going to have less inspections. Those are down a little bit. But the value is up quite a bit. And Andre mentioned that, and he was correct. The Lowry Center project that's starting to get underway, that's about a $30 million project. So that's why the first quarter, is going to be up quite a bit for 21. That'll probably level out as we head out through the rest of the year. There again, but because the permits are down, revenue's down a little bit as well. We have seen quite a few more single-family homes starting to come in. We had 15 that were approved, which is up quite a bit from last year. So that's good news, and we're hoping to see a lot more of those. So you can just see a trend in the value of construction here, a little bit of a drop off overall, mostly due to COVID. I will say, Tim shared that just so far this year, I think we've had a pretty big uptick in fees collected, over $80,000 just in the first quarter here, which is good. And I think he said last week that they had on one day about 50 permits issued. So we'll see if that's a trend, or just a really, really high peak, but there seems to be some pent up demand after COVID. So hopefully we'll see those trends continue. And here be the last one when it comes to building standards. There again, permit activity, you can see a peak about 17, dropped off the last couple of years. The bottom graph here is our single family homes. You can see we were up in the 20s, close to 30, dropped down. We were up again to about 15 here from 11 last year. So we're hoping that trend will continue. And that housing presentation that I mentioned that has a lot of the market data, that's right here. You can find that online if you're interested in that. One of the performance indicators, just to mention, things that we track is how long does it take to get a sign permit? Well, it takes an hour on average in Worcester, and you can see that on our performance dashboard. How long does it take for a zoning certificate review? On average, about 3 hours. So that's a pretty quick turnaround. A commercial plan review, so something big, something large, 11 days is our average turnaround. And if somebody calls for an inspection, our average time is 2.5 hours. So that's pretty good. And as we continue to track that, you'll be able to see if we keep that up, and over the years. And there again, you can find all that on our performance dashboard online. And moving right along, looking at engineering, a lot of our infrastructure, public infrastructure. There's just to give you a little highlight for 21, we got over $3 million in road and paving scheduled for 2021. That's starting to get away right now. These are some of the streets that you'll see. For funding, you can see engineering does a good job of getting a lot of grants. ODOT, OPWC, some state grants. So in 2020, we received almost $3 million in grants, a little bit of loan, zero interest loan for infrastructure projects. So that's a good bit. Roger did list some of the projects that started, 2020. A lot of these projects span, a couple of years from initial planning, design to construction. So you can see some of the major projects that are started last year, continuing through this year. And when you add up the funding and the fees that they charge for permits, it's about $4.5 million. Like I said, about almost 3 million of that's in grants, but then they do receive 1.2 million from ODOT, almost 200,000 in permits and permissive tax. So there's a good bit of revenue that does come in through that. These are just some of the projects. Again, like I said, these will span, a couple of years, but they're all going on at the same time and they're being managed. So in 2020, at one time, they were managing 25 projects with a construction value of over 11 million. You can just see the types by water, storm, sanitary, and roadway, obviously the bulk being roadway. And if you do the math, if we were to simply hire out all of the engineering that we needed for the projects based on the industry standard, be about 8.5% of construction costs, versus what we do in-house. So we only hired out about 0.97% by value of construction, so less than 1%. So you were getting a value of over $2 million of our guys doing a lot of this stuff in-house. And that's just based on the construction projects, not the other things they do for all the other cities or all the other city divisions that they work with as well. And down here, this PCI, there's another performance measure. How are we doing with our roads when we're patching them, resurfacing them, replacing them? These ratings should be getting better every year, and they are. They keep going up, and you can see we're at 78 right now on average. So there's a lot of roads that are a lot better than that as well. And that's PCI, pavement condition index, according to ODOT, that would be on the good side. They would rate, not poor, not needing reconstructed. That would just be the majority of our streets really only need a little bit of preventative maintenance. So that's a good indicator. And so not only do you see it in the PCI, but you also see it in the number of potholes and the amount of asphalt. So look at this number right here. In the last 4 years, we've seen a 265% decrease in our potholes patching. That means there's less. It's not that we're doing less because we're choosing to. That means there's less to fill, and we're just using less asphalt product. So you can see over the years how these went from 4,500 potholes down to 1,700 in 2020. So that's a real good indicator of how well we're doing and keeping our roads and really catching up with that needed maintenance. The other thing here is another performance indicator we use is how long does it take from the first time we hear of a pothole till we get it fixed. And, over half of them are within a week, they're already fixed. Some are days, they get a call, they track that, they get out, they fix it. So that's something we keep track of, how fast we're doing. Kurt keeps track of that, how quickly are we responding to those things? Because if we don't, that could be a claim later, for damage to a car. There again, you can see that on our performance dashboard. Snow and ice control in our winter season, which spans from last year to this year, we had 33 events. If you add up all the snow, it'd be about 36 inches overall, but a lot of man hours, a lot of tons of salt. So you can see over the years, the amount of man hours, the tons of salt, and the cost per lane mile when you add that up. And it tends to be cyclical. We have, high years, a lot of snow, a lot of cold. We have low years like 20, which wasn't a lot. And then in 2021, looking back, we're back up a little bit. So we'll see. We'll just see how that goes. I can't tell you that PPM has scheduled to pave about portions of about 13 streets and 13 alleys in 2021. So hopefully we'll continue to see these pothole numbers go down. And just a little more, again, information on our maintenance department. I guess the overall highlight I would just like to show, when you look back at the potholes, you look at their maintenance of the storm sewer system, the leaf collection, and there's a lot of man hours here, a lot of loads of debris, a lot of work days that they spend doing just a great job, I think, keeping our city maintained, keeping water flowing, keeping roads in good shape, picking up leaves. So if you take away anything, it's just how just the volume of work that our maintenance guys put into things. Just wanted to highlight one project. It just got done here, but it was started to be planned late last year. This is ultimately what it was planting a lot of trees up at Oak Hill Park. If you remember when we did Oak Hill Park, we did most of what was originally designed, but we sort of ran out a little bit of money, and there's areas up there that we let go to natural sort of prairie that were originally intended to have some groves of trees and things like that. So Rotary decided, as part of their project this year, to do a grove up there. So we partnered with Rotary. They paid to have the trees moved from the OARDC. There were excess trees down there that were donated after the tornado many years ago. These trees are 3 inches to 8 inches in diameter, anywhere from 12 to 25 feet tall. So if you go up and look at them up there right now, they look like they've been there for years. So the OARDC donated those. Davey Tree knocked 25% off, that gave us a discount for relocating and planting those. And then our engineering and PPM guys help lay that out and help them plan that. They have, I think there's, and Kurt will have to correct me, anywhere from 20 to 30, maybe just over that, trees that are planted up there right now. So that's a pretty cool project. It looks really nice. So if you get a chance, go up and take a look at that. It's really well done. Last slide on our property maintenance. Again, the volume of work we do, maintaining our own traffic signals, we have electricians on staff, doing our own pavement markings, keeping our signs up to date, doing all our garage work, over almost 500,000 in work orders, keeping our vehicles running out there, and just a limited amount that we're actually contracting out right now. We can get that done quickly and better, doing it ourselves in-house. I will say, after all that work that those guys do, no disruptions, to service to our citizens because of COVID. We made adjustments internally, adjusted schedules, adjusted, some how we do some things to try to make sure we were not seeing a letdown as far as the citizens go. That they see that maintenance of our service to them. So good job by Kurt and his crew. So we'll move over. Getting towards the end, look at our utilities. You can see the annual water produced, how that has gone down. It went down quite a bit. from 2013, 2018, jumped up a little bit. And I'd say that most of this drop here, as far as water produced, is because we were aggressively tracking leaks, replacing water lines, doing those kind of things. Had an uptick, I think, when, last couple of years when we had some of our local facilities, start using more water to produce their products. People like Daisy, Gojo, those kind of things. And a little bit of a drop off in the amount produced in 2020, I think, again, just due to some of the businesses ramping down a little bit, especially during the first half of last year. So you can see here a little calculation on the amount. So $4.3 to treat 1,000 gallons. And the other thing that Nate's done a really good job of doing is it's really communicating this and publishing a lot of this information out to our citizenry. Our consumer confidence report done and out there. Our pollution prevention plan is out there, EPA approved and published. And so just doing a good job of getting the word of how good a job we do. Our drinking water meets or exceeds EPA standards 100% of the time. So that's a good performance measurement there. And if anybody's interested, if you divide it out based on those numbers, we produce and treat about 40,000 gallons per resident in 2020. So if you do the math backwards, if you're on average and use 40,000 gallons, 4.31, probably about $170 a year for the water that you use. This is another good story. Looking back over the years, and this is the amount of water produced and then non-revenue water. So water that was, leaking out of pipes, or we weren't, for whatever reason, wasn't metered. So we started back in 2013 and said, we really got to get a handle on this. And so between PPM and engineering, the billing guys, in finance, we've seen a tremendous, we're down to about 15%, which is, if you look at a system our age and our size, that's just tremendous to be that. There's most systems our size, our age, are probably a little bit higher when it comes to the unaccounted for water. So they've done a great job, and they continue to do that. Like 70% of our utility infrastructure is over 20 years old. So we're continuing to replace that, detect leaks, and those guys have done a really good job. This is our wastewater plant. I shouldn't say wastewater, water resource recovery plant. And you can just see over the years, the trend in the amount of water that we've treated. Did see a drop off in 20, less coming down the pipe. So I would probably, and Nate can correct me again, attribute that to, just maybe a little less in some of our industries, doing a good job trying to find infiltration and those kind of things in our system. And this is a little picture of our sludge tank. If you were wondering, they're still working on this, but they're getting the roof on right now. I think they're getting close. They're getting ready to fill it and test it. And so hopefully, within the next month or so, we can get that filled, start really using that, and start draining our lagoons. So, but they've done a really good job down there producing Class A biosolids, getting revenue in, from acceptance of that waste that Andre was talking about, over $800,000, and continue to produce electricity down there for a water plant and our water resource and recovery. And some exciting things going on down there now. Nate's looking at, maybe possibly capturing that gas and maybe even trying to sell some of that gas back to the gas company. So even catching a little bit more of that. And last utility slide, I'll try to wrap this up pretty quick. Here again, just a little bit of inventory. You can see some of the things that our guys do: jetting, televising, maintaining, some of our meter stats, amount of meters that, and you can see here in the blue's 2020, the red is 19. Just I'll highlight the fact that you'll see a drop off in the number of water shutoffs. And that's because, again, we were doing, some places were shut down, and we were not we were mandated not to shut off water for non-payment. So we did fewer of those last year. This is probably the most significant impact of COVID on our city operations, and that would be to our recreation department. You can see participants were down 65, volunteers down at 40%, attendance down 72, soccer 97% down, and that's just because of the restrictions. And that was one of the specific areas, that the state shut down. We weren't allowed to have those. We did open, one of our pools in our spray ground. We were only one of 25% that did that. So there were 75% of municipalities did not open their pools in 2020, but we were one of them, and they did a really good job. We didn't have any issues down there as far as COVID was related. Improvements are going on right now. Some of the final things, putting the final new roof on up there. And if you get a chance, in the next couple of weeks, go drive by up there and see how nice our chalet looks right now. So here's again just some pool statistics. Obviously, big drop off in 2020. Hopefully, we'll see that come back up. We are planning on opening all the pools. We'll only have some limited restrictions, due to distancing and things, but everything's going to open up. All our programs are going to be back and operating this year. Just with a little bit of restrictions as far as mask wearing and some distancing requirements, but everything up and running. Our rec department employees have to get tested for COVID every 2 weeks, just like in some adult daycare centers. So we're doing everything we can to keep everybody safe. Transportation program, again, we did see a drop off there in 2020 as people were afraid to come out, but those things are going back up again. And we're providing, that's a very vital service. It probably became more needed than ever, in 2020. With some people that use it, losing their jobs and really needing that transportation to get to some critical services. So only 2 slides left. This is internally, the job that our HR department does. You can see, we track these things. What's our turnover rate? Well, we're about a third of what it is nationally for other municipalities, 6% versus 20, which is good. You can see the bulk of our turnover is basically over 19 years. That means people retiring. So that's the bulk of our turnover that we have. So really doing a good job there. And if you look, this is FTEs overtime working for the city. And you can see this is a pretty darn flat curve going all the way back to 2009. We were at 193, dropped a little bit right after the Great Recession, and have kept it. We were 192 FTEs at the end of 2020. So we've really held the line there. Now that's something we'll have to really keep an eye on, as we continue to grow and we have more roads and more water and more sewer and more calls for service. That's something we track and keep an eye on, our workloads, hours, man hours, just to see where we're at and evaluate those kind of things. But really doing a good job. And this is, really the last slide. We try to communicate what we do to people. That was limited a little bit in 2020, but the mayor does the state of the city. We do these updates every year. We try to put everything out there online, the performance dashboards out there, newsletters, utility bill inserts. We try to schedule those, at least have one in every other one. And of course, we couldn't do our Citizens Academy or Police Academy, but we continue to try to do those kind of things and just get the word out. What a great place the city is, what we're doing for our citizens, and maybe even attracting some people here. So with that, if you want any more information, you really want to dive into the weeds, you can go to our website and you can see all our annual reports. They're out there now for each by division, and those performance indicators are also out there, and you can take a look at those and you can enter feedback even, and we look at that to change things and provide the information that our citizens want. So that was a little update for 2020, a little bit of a look ahead for 21. Hopefully that was informative, and like I said, all the managers are here and we're always available to answer any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ansel, this conclude our Finance Committee meeting?
you want me to assume that it does?
Yeah, what I was going to say, let's reconvene at 7:35, take a quick break, and then we'll start council meeting about 7:35.
All right, here goes. Bye, everybody.